I think we could all agree that sound is a huge factor in bass fishing. You know, they definitely hear well, they use their lateral line, they feel vibrations, and that's how they hunt. You know, whether it's, you know, crawfish, shad, bluegill, crappie, brim, whatever they're eating, shiners, anything, bass are always listening for food sources. And I've been using a Hydrowave since day one. And basically what a Hydrowave does is it mimics the sounds of bass and bait fish and the two interacting. So we have created a lot of different sound patterns for it since the original version that we came out to really dial it in, you know, to be very specific for certain types of bait. And, you know, the KVD Hydrowave, it has 25 different sound patterns, and, you know, we got everything from, you know, brim beds to brim popping the pads to crawfish sounds to shad, blueback herring, and bass interacting with them. So whatever the technique that you're fishing or whatever area, the time of the year, we've got a sound pattern that's really going to match that situation. It's really easy to use. So, you know, you just have to turn it on, set the sound pattern for, you know, where you're at, the time of the year, the type of bait you're trying to mimic, and then adjust the volume, and then whether you want it continuous or a delay. And I really look at the conditions to determine, you know, the volume and, you know, again, whether I want a delay or not. So if I'm out fishing and I'm power fishing, it's one of those windy days where you're covering a ton of water and you're burning a spinner bait down the bank, things like that, I'm gonna run it continuous. And one of my favorites for that is the original power pattern. You know, that is a good blend of shad sounds, of bass attacking them. It's just a really good song, so to speak. That's how we look at them, is it's almost like a music sheet of bait fish and bass sounds put together. And again, when you're, you know, running with the trolling motor on high and it's windy and there's a lot of background noise, having, you know, more volume and just running a continuous pattern is going to be the most effective. There's a good one. Good one. I'm not trying to have every bass in the lake hear it from wherever I'm at, and that's what a lot of people make a mistake with a Hydrowave, is they think that, you know, hey, if a little's good, turn the volume up and be more aggressive. I want the sound pattern to be natural for the current conditions. I want it to match the hatch, so to speak. That's why we have those specific sounds, you know, for offshore fishing or for schooling or brim beds, things like that. So you can match the hatch, but you also want to match the conditions. So, you know, on those calm, you know, high bright post-frontal days when the sun's shining and there's just not a lot of activity, that's why we have those finesse patterns and the ultra finesse. And I'm gonna run those real quietly, and I typically almost without fail, unless I'm just power fishing, I'm gonna run some type of delay. You know, either 15 or 30 seconds. You know, on those type of days, I like to have a minute of silence. So I'll run it up to 60 seconds so you have that calm period, and then all of a sudden that Hydrowave will kick off. And what happens is if there's bass and bait fish in close proximity, or bass in the forge in close proximity, that Hydrowave is the trigger a lot of times. So all of a sudden they're sitting there, you know, there's bluegill and bass sitting side by side, and then they hear another bass attacking a bluegill and it triggers them to go. So that's, we've seen that a lot of times before, you know, where all of a sudden you'll be sitting in an area and you can hear the Hydrowave speaker on the front of your trolling motor and the bait fish start popping. Or a bass comes up schooling just a short pitch away. Over my career, I've seen that so many times where I'm going along and a bass comes up schooling just a short pitch away. I make a cast there and catch him because it was just the trigger. When you got the bass and the bait fish in close proximity, the Hydrowave is the key to lighting them up. You know, in schooling situations, it's obvious to see the benefits of a Hydrowave. You know, when you can imitate those same sounds, and bass are very competitive in nature like that. And that's where I think that it really is the most effective, is when you've got groups of fish together. And it doesn't matter if it's deep or shallow. What I've found is that it's almost more effective in deep water situations than it is up shallow. You know, if you got a single bass that's on an isolated laydown, it's pretty hard to get that fish to fire, you know, to get fired up by the sounds of a Hydrowave. But if I've got 10 of them together and there's a pot of shad close by, that's where the Hydrowave really can be the trigger. You know, over the years, I've seen time and time again, you know, in offshore schools of bass, ledge fishing, Kentucky Lake, places like that, Pickwick, Wheeler, Gunnersville, where I'm throwing a crankbait out there and, you know, I can get a school fired up. That Hydrowave, the sound of that, you know, that Hydrowave there just keeps that school going. I can keep that school ignited and catch more of them out of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it. One of the things that you'll notice is that just about every pro fisherman has a Hydrowave on the front of his boat, and they don't talk about it a lot. That should tell you all you need to know. Mounting a Hydrowave is really simple. All you need is to, you know, connect the power wire to a power source, mount the head unit, and then put the transducer on the trolling motor. And you know, some people say, you know, you want to put it on the bottom, but I mount mine right on the top. We've designed that speaker to be omnidirectional, so the way that sound travels in the water, it just goes everywhere from that speaker. So there's really no benefit to putting it, you know, below, and I just do it on the top to keep it a little more protected, you know, if you're around stumps and trees, rocks and things like that. So that speaker, once it's underwater, I mean, it's just sending those sound patterns just all around the boat. Plain and simple, a Hydrowave is designed to imitate the natural sounds that bass hear every single day while they're feeding. It can fire up a school, and it definitely gets you some extra bites.